notation software, introduction to Sibelius. I'm using Sibelius 7.5 on a PC, so some of the commands I'm saying will be PC specific, but I'll annotate with the Mac ones for those of you that use Mac. This might look slightly different than yours if you're using Sibelius first or Sibelius newer than 7.5 or older. So this is the startup screen with a bunch of templates. I'm going to click on string quartet because that's what the assignment is. And we're just going to hit, there's all the metadata here, but I want to show you how to do it just in case you haven't made up your mind yet if you're composing something. So I'm hitting create. So this started our instruments. Okay, you see how it gives you 4/4 and everything, and we have to change all that. So we're going to do some of the basic things first, and then talk about how to insert, the title and the composer and all of that. But the most important thing, if we're looking at the example from class, was this Beethoven piece, the quartet number 14. It's in cut time and has a pickup beat, an anacrusis of one quarter note. Do that first, because if you do it later, it can get a little bit messy with copying and pasting things. So we're going to hit T for time signature. And it opens up, you can see how it references the top of the screen on the ribbon, time signature. Instead of just clicking the cut time, we're going to click more options. Then click the cut time there. And make sure you click here. It says pickup or upbeat or anacrusis. Start with bar length of. Click that checkbox. And there'll be a quarter note. Hit OK. Click in the first measure, and you'll have that quarter note. This 4/4, just delete it. Everything should be in cut time from then on out. The other thing is the key signature. We're going to hit K for key signature, and we're going to pick C sharp minor. There is E major and C sharp minor. Obviously, they look the same. I think since the piece is really in C sharp minor, I think it does matter if for transposition purposes, just putting preference to the proper accidentals and enharmonic spellings. Let's keep it that way. We have our time signature and our key signature. For the title, you right click in a blank space up here, and this menu will open. A lot of times there's hotkeys, but for the title there isn't. So we hit go to text, and over here to title. It matters which one you use. You have to use title, and we're going to call it quartet. I think it's in the German number 14, German spelling. That now will be printed on every part, nice and big, on top of the page. If you did another kind of text tool, it won't be printed properly. So that's why we have to make sure we're using that. Then we're going to text again. So right clicking, text. Next we're going to do composer. Oops. There we go. There's the composer. Okay. If you want to insert the subtitle, whatever it was, let's reference. So we're going to add the subtitle here. Text, subtitle, and I'm going to type. If you want to be accurate and put the umlaut, there is an ASCII code, or you can just right click in the box and find the umlaut for zwei Violinen. Oops, sorry here. Violinen brush. No Oxford comma for some reason. It's okay. So there's your subtitle. You can also, if you right click and go to text, you can add a dedication and the lyricist if you need them. This piece doesn't have them. But those are the ones that don't have hotkeys. All right, the other big important thing to discuss, tempo. It's not Control T or Command T. If you do Control T or Command T and you do the tempo, that is not a tempo. That is just text. It might look like a tempo. But if I go to the right corner here, if you see where my mouse is in the upper right-hand corner and hit the plus sign, that allows you to select an individual part. So if I go to the cello, look, the tempo isn't printed. Okay? So make sure when you do tempo, you either right-click text tempo or Control-Alt-T. On a Mac, it's Command-Alt-T. So Control-Alt-T. Then you type in, you could just copy and paste if you made a mistake, but troppo è molto espressivo. And adagio, but not too much and very expressively. Now, that's a tempo. If I check my other part, everyone's going to have the right tempo on the page. It also matters if you export this file into a MIDI file and you want to do a virtual instrument realization, this will be recognized as a tempo. and it will change. If we check the tempo later on, I mean, it says half note equals 30, that matters because this sends tempo messages to the MIDI file. So that's going to be the next step. So we got our metadata. We have the title, subtitle, composer. It doesn't have to look exactly like the score that you're engraving. And there's a little bit of house style involved, like the score we're looking at has Beethoven in like big bold letters. We don't have to worry about that. Inserting notes. Click on the rest for first violin. It turns blue. And you can just hit the letter G on your keyboard. Okay? Then you have the G there. You can go and you can put your mouse over it and see how it turns gray and you can click. I find it much easier just to use the keyboard. Because then I can hit R. So R repeats whatever was highlighted. Now what I can do is move this note with the arrow keys. I want to go to B sharp, right? So I moved it up twice to B. Then I'm hitting on my, then hit escape to add the sharp. We hit escape. Then I'm hitting 8 on my keypad. See this little keypad thing? That corresponds to the keypad on your computer. Only if your computer has the separate keypad. You can't use the row of numbers on top of your keyboard. Mac users, you can hit Option and use WQE, ASD, ZXC to correspond to these. If you don't have that option, you can just click here to add the accidental. And you can hear it plays in real time. Okay. Same with if I want to make it a half note, I hit 5. Then I hit R and up to get the C sharp. I hit R down twice for the A, then I'm putting the augmentation dot. Right? So all of this, let me get out of the way so you can see the score that I'm copying here. See that? I'm just hitting the keypad with my right hand and my left hand is hitting R. Again, there's and there's the first chunk, first 4 complete measures, and I want a couple extra in a few seconds. So what else do we need to add? So that's just R and up and down. What else do we need to add? A tie. Ties are here. You can hit enter, not the enter that is on the main part of the keyboard, the one on the keypad. The one on the main part of the keyboard does an enharmonic equivalent. This one allows for the tie. Ties and slurs are not the same thing in music, nor are they the same thing in notation software. So we added the tie here from this G sharp into the next measure, but the slur we have to add in little sections. How does this work? A couple ways you can do it. Click on the G sharp in the beginning, hold down Shift, click on the next C sharp. See how it highlights those? I just now hit the letter S, and now I have a slur. Another way you could do it is you can click on the G sharp, hit S, then hit the space bar. And you can keep hitting the space bar to make a long slur if you wish. But in the piece that we're copying, we have the one slur in those measures. The next slur begins at this G sharp, and it terminates at this F sharp. Next thing we need is dynamics. There aren't many here, but there is a crescendo here. Another word for crescendo is hairpin. I think many people say that, but hairpin starts with H, so we hit the letter H. Again, how did I highlight this? First note, hold Shift, click on the last note, H. The next note, we have a sforzando. This will be written as expression text. When we're using Sibelius and we need something written underneath here, piano, forte, dolce, those kinds of things, we will be using expression text. So to do that, you hit Control E. Then you have a blinking cursor right here, a flashing cursor right here. Okay? Then you right click there and you'll see the menu of acceptable text that they know, like legato means something, più, forte, piano, all of those are right here for you. So you can simply select it. Another way to do it is while it's flashing, make sure it's flashing, hold down Control, Control S, Control F. If you are hitting Control S here, what's going to happen? It's going to save. What's Control F going to do? It's going to find. Okay, so be careful. Make sure you're in the expression mode first. Here's another chance you get at it, the G sharp. Control E, then hold down Control and hit P. Again, if you didn't hit Control E, you're going to get the print dialog. All right. So Control E allows you to type in italics underneath Holding down Control when you're in that mode gives you the proper bold font. If you don't use the proper bold font, it doesn't look like a piano symbol. It just looks like the letter P, and we won't recognize that as a piano. One more. I've got a diminuendo on this A. Click on the A to highlight it. It's a reverse hairpin, if you will. It is a hairpin. It's a diminuendo. It's the opposite of crescendo. So instead of H, it's Shift H. And look how it lines up perfectly. If you wish, you may click on the edges of these to change their lengths. This is totally acceptable and totally clear. I mean, this depends how you want to interpret the crescendo. If you want the crescendo to end at the end of the B sharp or not. On this version, it looks like it ends kind of in the beginning of this. It doesn't matter for this purpose. Some other tricks. If you look at the second violin part, it's a perfect fifth below violin 1. It also begins on beat 4. So what we're going to do to make our lives a little bit easier, instead of clicking in every note or typing in every note, we can just copy this part. So you can click on the first note, hold Shift, click on the last note. Just like any Windows program, Control-C, Mac, Command-C, copies it to your clipboard. If you want to paste it here, here's an issue though. You see when we copy this, it starts on beat 4. If we click on this measure is beginning on beat 1. If I can do Control-V, Command-V to paste, now it's not lined up correctly. So what we have to do first, change this measure, this whole rest, so we can see beat 4. Simple way to do it, on your keypad, 5, then click here and hit 4. Well, what did I do? I took this whole rest, converted it to 2 half rests, convert the last half rest to 2 quarter rests. Now you can access beat 4 by clicking on it and hitting paste. And now the second violin part has the correct rhythm. It does not have the correct pitch. 2 ways to do this. If you hit down 5 times, it does a diatonic transposition and maintains the accidentals you have. However, if you look at the score, it's not diatonic, right? The D sharp right here is not D sharp. It should be D natural. So you can go and change them to natural by hitting, hit escape. I do that sometimes subconsciously. I'm just hitting escape on my keyboard to unload my mouse. But if you don't want to do that by hand, another way to do this is to do Shift T, not Control T. Control T would be text, which we don't want to do. So let me re-highlight that. Shift T, then click Transpose by interval down a perfect fifth. Done. Later on the piece, there is another hint. Like, look at the viola part. A few measures later, begins when... Oh, there's a little variation, actually. This C sharp has a B sharp after it, so we have to just take this slur. We can click and drag and extend it to here. This is, measure 8. But the viola part begins here. So I'm doing the same thing from earlier and just transposing down an octave. How did I do that so fast? I hit Control with my left pinky, and I'm using my right hand. It doesn't matter what finger you use, but I'm using my right hand, up and down, transposes the octave. So the viola begins on this G sharp down here. Later on the piece, the cello does the same thing. So there's all your basics of inputting notes. Some things to know about, you're getting all these extra measures that you might not need. If you hold down Control and click on a blank measure, it turns it purple. If you hit delete, it rips it out of the score. That's different than if you don't hit Control and it's blue. Like if I click here and hit delete, if I click the whole system and hit delete, it just removes the pitch or the content. If you hit Control, so it's purple, it rips it out. So now you have no space there. So sometimes I don't like having all these extra measures. I want to delete them. So other things we have to discuss are making parts. If you want individual parts, it's really simple. The plus sign up here I showed you, and you click on whatever part. Most of the time, it looks perfect. Sometimes once we start adding more notes, some things might move a little bit. So you might have to click and drag things over. This is a great way to check to make sure you put everything on the right part. If I have multiple parts at once, I may inadvertently put this diminuendo. Let's say, here's an example for you. If I quickly, let's say I had a part here with the viola and I deleted, I made this a rest, and I had this this crescendo here, and I brought it up here. Let's say this one weren't here. And I was just like, oh, no, I meant that to be here. I didn't want this viola part to be here. And this is a kind of a weird example because the whole rest you can tell something's amiss. But you can see that crescendo. It looks like it's on violin 2. Most normal people will look at that and say it's on violin 2. However, that's married to the viola part here. So just be careful there's not things spilling over into the wrong part. And if you do things step by step, you wouldn't have that issue. So do things in a logical way. When you engrave this, you may make the decision that you want to just input the pitches first and worry about the articulation and everything later. Like the next step here, they have a courtesy accidental on that B, probably because it's the first B natural. I don't know how necessary that is. But you can just do what I'm doing here with not even putting in the accidentals. Then go back in, add the E sharps here, because this section is in F sharp minor, and then you go and add in the slurs. So this is one thing that's a house style thing. If you look at this measure, this B has a slur all the way tied to this A, so you could do a slur like that. I don't know how you want to interpret it. Is it if this is one bow or not? Or if you keep going, you can see there's a slur all the way to here. You can do this with one bow. So it depends how you want to make it look, and that really doesn't matter. String players might have a better understanding of how you would like to bow this. But I'm more concerned that you're using the proper tool. Do not use a tie. All right? They're not ties. They're slurs there. So make sure you make this look nice and clean. Right? And simply just R and up. Oops, go back. And you can use arrow keys back and forth in order to select notes. So if you have one selected, you made a mistake, I'm just using the arrow key on my keyboard and I can move them up and down. Okay, so jumping ahead, I filled out the rest of it. It's not 100% perfect. I know I might want to adjust some of these slurs so they're not colliding. You can click and drag. I can do that. But we have to talk about the piano reduction. If you're running Sibelius first, you could only have 4 staves. So the best way to do this is simply make a new file. Sorry if this is a little tedious, but you make a new file, and I recommend putting them next to each other if you have the room on your computer, on your monitor. And quickly put in the metadata, which we went over how to do. So I'm just putting in, the cut time and all this, and you can just simply copy and paste all of this, hitting shift click, copy and paste, and just drag it over. That doesn't matter too much. Yeah. Now, to get it to work as a piano reduction, triple click. You can either triple click or you click the first note, hold down shift and click the last note, the violin one. But triple clicking highlights the whole part. Control C, Control V, paste it into the next staff. Some stuff might not translate perfectly. You might want to go and look if you made any mistakes. Oh, look what I did. There's a weird measure of 1. Okay, so check for things like that. Make sure that doesn't happen. So I paste it in here. Now, second violin. We want to put that in voice 2. There's 4 different voices that we can select here. You could tediously go through and type everything in again, but I think it's best just to use these voices. Okay, so second violin, I'm triple clicking, copy, go to the first measure here, paste into voice. So what I did here on the paste tool, the little down arrow, paste into voice and hit OK. Now everything's in my second voice. Check it over. It's good to click and drag these. See how these are red? It means there's a collision. So I'm clicking and dragging the bottom staff. And it leaves a little bit more room here so they're not colliding. You want to do this for all your parts. However, I'm going to jump ahead to something that you might encounter. This doesn't look good and it doesn't look very playable. So it's okay if you have to transpose something by an octave here or there. Or, who says this has to be part 1? We could have simply, if I undo what I just did, pasted the second violin here. And then you can make it switch into part 1 later on. So maybe I want to take this part here, maybe starting here, cut that out, paste into voice, right? And maybe I'll take some of these notes here and keep them in the left hand. So there's going to be a little bit of back and forth to see like how to make this look nice and how to make it playable. You don't want to make the pianist do things like this. So 2 hands were necessary. Octave transpositions might be necessary every now and then. Instead of cleaning this up, because that's your job, jumping to the end, get rid of all the extra measures. One other thing is when you're done, export. So File, Export, PDF. Make sure you do score in all parts as separate files and save them somewhere that makes sense. I put everything on my desktop and then delete them when you're done, or put them in a nice folder. I have a folder for this class right here.